welcome to Economic Forum. My name is Cynthia Jikaramba. I hope I find you well. Today, we take a look at standards, which have been an integral part of our lives as we strive to promote quality in everything we do. As Zimbabwe embarks on a journey to economic recovery, there have been initiatives to support locally manufactured products through campaigns such as the Buy Zimbabwe. However, local producers are being encouraged to produce quality goods and services to compete on international markets, as well as building trust and confidence with consumers. That was the call when captains of industry converged in Harare to commemorate the World Standards Day on October 14 under the theme Standards Build Trust. The event, hosted by the Standards Association of Zimbabwe, was attended by government officials, African Organization for Standardization ASO, consumer representatives, and the private sector. In his address, SARS representative Mr. Godfrey Dube said his organization is committed to facilitating the development and use of standards to enhance competitiveness and safeguard the welfare of communities.
The first function of the organization of SARS is to prepare and publish Zimbabwe standards, to promote an understanding of standards requirements by offering standard-based training, and also to provide technical services for testing of manufactured goods and raw materials and calibration of the equipment. The other one is to encourage the use of Zimbabwe standards by operating certifications registration schemes, to provide information services on national, foreign, regional and international standards, and also to provide on behalf of the government, World Trade Organization, TPT, the Technical Barriers to Trade Inquiry Point on standards and conformity assessment information. We are working on the development of the Zimbabwe National Standards Strategy. This is an ISO initiative, and it needs the involvement of everyone in the country.
ASO President and SARS Director General Dr. Yves Gadzikwa said the World Standards Day commemoration is a means of paying tribute to experts who develop technical voluntary agreements that are published as international standards.
Ladies and gentlemen, the world has become very complex. The world has become very fast. It has become very unpredictable and interconnected. Products, components, raw materials are produced in one part of the world and are used many thousands of kilometers away. Likewise, services are delivered across borders and continents. Therefore, the issue of trust has become a big issue. A product or service conforming to an international standard is imbued with a trusted symbol of quality, safety, and compatibility. Ladies and gentlemen, standards speak to the diversity of interconnected world, introducing uniformity at the interfaces where we need to be certain that we are speaking on the same terms. Standards connect us with reliable modes of communication, codes of practice, and trusted frameworks for cooperation, introducing common interpretations on reciprocal sides of communication and transactions.
Dr. Gadzikwa said the National Standardization Strategy launched in July this year will ensure a coordinated approach to the development of standards in Zimbabwe.
The ZNSS has a direct link to economic growth, competitiveness, and responsible business conduct, all of which are important to the implementation of Zim Asset. And as SARS, we are delighted to be playing our part to making sure that Zim Asset is implemented in a coordinated fashion. ZNSS aims to identify the standards that are required to enhance GDP contribution, exports, imports, address pertinent social issues, expected future needs, and, very important, ease of doing business and stakeholder views in general. I want to highlight here that ZNSS is a new initiative under the ISO 2016-2020 strategy plan to assist development countries to exploit the full value of standards. The project is being executed through what we call the ISO methodology in order to establish such a national standardization strategy. And this approach has been adopted by the national standards body. The expected output of this strategy is a 3-year plan, 2017-2019, with a priority list of standards to be developed, adopted, revised, and implemented to support sustainable economic development and growth in line with government's efforts. The key milestones that have so far already been covered and achieved are, number one, the establishment of a national task force which is made of SARS and other stakeholders. Number two, training of the task force members has already been undertaken. Number three, the collection of economic and social data, information, to enable us to fully understand the key drivers of the GDP contribution, exports, imports, and pertinent social issues and expected future needs.
She told delegates that the Zimbabwe National Standardization Strategy has a direct link to economic growth, competitiveness, and responsible business conduct, thereby enhancing the implementation of the Zimbabwe Agenda for Sustainable Socio-Economic Transformation, ZIM-ASSET.
We can all make a difference as we apply standards to our different processes and businesses. As the world commemorates World Standards Day, make that decision to use international and national standards and play your part to contribute to sustainable economic development and growth in Zimbabwe.
Also, Secretary General Dr. Hemojin Sengimana commended Zimbabwe for being a peaceful destination, unlike the negative portrayal by the Western media.
When you see on CNN and BBC talking about Zimbabwe, you might think that when you land, you will find a collapsing society. It's not true. Look how you look. I move around a lot, yeah. And whatever I'm saying is true. Yeah. Keep it up.
He called for the harmonization of African standards to enhance inter-Africa trade.
We have already signed 16 countries among 19 countries in what we call tripartite, which is COMESA, East Africa, and SADC, signed the agreement to trade to one another. But we should think more. Why all these agreements, at a later stage, it doesn't happen to have trade to one another. We are countries where we start trading with our neighbor when Europe or America start putting on these trade issues, saying your security is not good, you are not doing what we tell you, we will not trade with you. Then you look to your neighbor because they stopped trading with you. When you trade your neighbor, it's not costly. If we are harmonizing on the level of Africa, we have a participative system. Stakeholders' involvement, that's where the trust in the standards start. The products that people say they're going to expire the next day. Yeah, I don't know the country that's what I'm talking about. But remember that country I'm not telling you today, that is trading with bigger players, is second in trade with USA, is trading with Europe. But you are told, don't. Yeah, it's up to us to set the standards. Yeah, what I need from you to trade with you should have this quality. You should be surprised that people are having substandard product. You shouldn't be surprised that they have standard product. Yeah. That's where we should be heading. It's very important. Then we can compete on the international market.
That was also Secretary General Dr. Hemogen Sengimana speaking at the occasion of the World Standards Day held in Harare recently. Economic Forum takes a short break. Join us in the second segment. Welcome to the second segment of Economic Forum, where we are looking at the World Standards Day commemorations held in Harare recently. Also present was Harare City Junior Mayor Nigel Marapara, who called for the need to spread the gospel of standardization amongst the youth.
Mankind from all over the world, they gather for one common thing. They gather for soccer and other sports. But today, they are gathering for something different, standards, because standards build trust. How can many gather concerning standards? What is so special about standards? Why do all today forgo everything to talk about standards? Guess what? Because standards define the quality of life, and standards build trust. The language of trade is in a standard. Quality and customer satisfaction are achieved through standards. Safety and health are achieved through standards. Sustainable economic development is achieved through standards because standards build trust. ISO 9001, standard for quality management. ISO 14001, standard for environmental management. Standards for food, personal safety, and many more. Indeed, standards build trust. Let us build trusted Zimbabwean brands with standards. Let us improve the quality of Zimbabwean lives with standards. Let us build a solid Zimbabwean economy with standards. Happy World Standards Day. Thank you.
A consumer representative, Ms. Rosemary Siachitema, emphasized on the need to involve consumers in standard-making processes since they are the ones at the receiving end of goods and services.
If somebody has spent a lot of years not wanting to teach you or inform you, you will have to make that positive exercise of actually going out and teaching your people to understand why we talk about standards and why we talk about consumers participating in the making of those standards, because they are the ones who use those products when they come out onto the shelf. We have to make people understand the linkages of poor products because they have not been given a standard, and the causing of poor living conditions that we then experience in our households. SI 64, our concern as consumers is that we don't only demand our local manufacturers to produce things that lack standards because we said we want them to produce locally. We want them to produce locally because there is something wonderful about producing in your own country. There's something wonderful about creating employment. There's something wonderful about exporting your own goods. But at the end of the day, whether you are digesting that product in Zimbabwe or outside Zimbabwe, it has to fit a certain criteria in terms of standards.
An ICT expert, Mr. Mudiwa Mvera, encouraged businesses to use information communication technologies to increase efficiency and cut production costs.
When you're looking at ICT, I think everyone has to agree that we can't live without ICT anymore. We could have done maybe 20, 30 years ago. Now everyone on a daily basis is using ICT. I don't think there's any business that I can imagine that does not use ICT in one format or the other. The challenge that I think is there in the ICT sector, or shall I say in the business sector, is how do businesses actually use the ICT. ICT, we all recognize, is driving innovation. It's bringing a lot of efficiency, it's reducing costs. But what it's actually doing is there's no ICT product that has been developed that does not address a need. No one writes software or comes up with a product for the fun of it. They're coming up with it to make it easier for people to live their lives, run their businesses. In terms of harmonization and standardization, I think our government has recognized that information security is something that is becoming important. If we can harmonize our laws, especially around the SADC region, it makes it a lot easier to prosecute crime, for example, because if someone commits a crime in Botswana, if we don't see it as a crime, or Botswana doesn't see it as a crime, it's very hard to prosecute. But if we've got harmonized laws that we all recognize, crimes of hacking, for example, or crimes of cyberbullying, it's a lot easier to prosecute.
Speaking on behalf of the Minister of Industry and Commerce, Honorable Mike Bima, Acting Director in the Department of Standards Development and Quality Assurance in the Ministry, Mrs. Bridget Zimwasha, said building trust is key in gaining consumer confidence.
Standards are what define how processes, products and services are to be designed, operated, executed with trust and dependability. Standards are therefore the foundation that ensures that everything works well. Everything involved in our life activities requires standards in order to function well. Without standards being met by all these aspects, the issues of safety are compromised. The use of internationally recognized standards ensures that processes, products, and services can be trusted in terms of quality, safety, interoperationality. Internationally recognized standards are developed through an open and transparent process and can be relied upon to build in trust in business.